Welcome in, everybody, to a nightcap edition of Birds 365, Wednesday, August 21st here. The final day of training camp is officially in the books. The Eagles are now moving into the 2024 football season. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Wednesday evening as training camp concludes?
Yeah, it was a bittersweet day. Last practice we get to see. We won't get to see another practice in full till the spring of 2025. So it's an extended period, and that's really the demarcation line we're talking about. So I don't know how important it is to anybody other than the preparation goes behind closed doors, so to speak. So it's not like the Eagles are going to stop preparing for the season. So I do think it gets a little bit overblown, but yeah, end of training camp, and Jaylen Herz is not perfect. He did not make history. He did not get a make-believe record, Sander Krause. So yeah, people got upset about that. Darius Slay with the interception.
Yeah,
although I will say this, and this tells you what nonsense these types of things are. There were a couple of people saying, it should have been blown dead as a sack for Bryce Huff. So if you want to blow it dead and call it a sack, technically you never got an interception. So
I saw that. Jeff McLean tweeted that, and I saw some people looking for clarification from Elliott Shore Parks, but yeah, they called it the interception. So look, I have no feelings one way or the other about it. It's training camp. Jaylen threw an interception in training camp. I don't care either way. I do think it's a positive thing from it, though, that he's protected the ball. We're not a team where Jaylen Herz has to be the greatest guy on the field every single day. We have a talented offense, and I think the fact that he's prioritizing protecting the football is the most positive part about it. But that's my take. I mean, look, I'm not going to sit here and cry that he threw an interception. I don't care.
Well, that's why I'm talking about it in such terms. I find it hilarious that people are going to Elliott as the arbiter of all things training camp football. I mean, I say it all the time on this show. Practice is practice. You have to understand what it is. And for people that don't, that's fine. I mean, yeah, that's fine, but it's not important. If you throw an interception, not important. And to your point about taking care of the football, that's one thing I said the entire offseason. I'm not concerned because he always takes care of the football. There's a randomness to turnovers in the NFL that you cannot control as much as Nick Sirianni would like to control it. Tip balls, what you're trying, and crazy things happening. What you're trying to prevent is the obvious mistakes. And if you go back to the two best examples of that would be the Jets game, egregious interception at the end of the game that cost the game by Jaylen Herz in the Seattle game. Same thing. Those are the things you're trying to prevent.
I think that fumble right in the playoff game as well. He took the safety. Was that what it was?
That game was such a blowout. I don't know. Yeah,
I think that happened early though, didn't it? It happened in the first half.
Yeah, that game wasn't going their way. But I said this about Dak Prescott the year prior, who had a bad season when it came to turning the football over. And Eagles fans are kind of spiking the football. And I said, be careful because his history says that will not continue. And it didn't continue. We regress back to his mean. I expect the same thing for Jaylen Herz. He typically doesn't turn it over a lot. And I don't think he'll turn it over a lot this year. It has nothing to do with training camp. Nothing.
Agreed. And like I said in the beginning there, I do think it's a positive thing because we do have a lot of good players on that offense. We don't need him to be, forcing things that don't need to be forced. And I think Jaylen is a smart guy. I think he's smart enough to know that. I thought his press conference today was great. John, I will say the other takeaway, I had from the press conference, Jaylen just, I don't know if it's just me. I don't know if it's just what I'm seeing, but the guy just seems cool, calm, and collected again. He seems like he's really found his place. Not that he ever didn't have it, but I think you saw a little bit more of an uptight guy last year. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but he just seems loose. He seems confident. He seems good to me in the press conferences. He seems like he really found his mojo. He found his voice in the locker room. Not that he ever didn't have it, but maybe he's reached a new level here with Kelsey gone, and it's kind of offense now fully. I just think he sounds better to me in the press conferences. I don't know if he does to you, but that's my takeaway.
No, I mean, he's always been that guy. So to me, it hasn't changed at all. He's always been cool, calm, collected. I think he's healthier. I think he feels better. I think he was banged up, and he kind of alluded to that. He never talks about his injuries. And at one point, he told us to stop asking last year because he wasn't going to talk about him. But I think it was, he was dealing with some stuff. Even if you go back to early in the season before his knee injury, I don't think he was the same, whether it was the ankles previously, he wasn't showing the same zip. This year, he seems to be healthier. And I think that's what it's about. And he admitted, he said, I think I'm in a better place physically. Obviously, I had some nicks there throughout the year. And I told you guys not to ask me about, but to deal with those things, I think all those things have made me better, blah, blah. Then he went into the cliches, but he admitted it. I think I'm in a better place physically. I think that's what it's about.
Yeah, looks healthier, seems more comfortable. That's my take. John might not agree, but that's where I'm going to go with it. John, let's get into the practice today, man. Last one, Johnny Mac. Before we break it down, you kind of hit it in the open, but I'm going to ask you to rehash it. What runs through your head when you walk out of there? You're not going to see this team now, like in the same capacity till the spring of next year. What goes through your head? I mean, you spend a lot of time, John. This becomes your life, how much time you guys spend down there and how hard you work. And, sometimes I don't think all of our viewers understand it to no fault of their own, but, I think have a chance to see how hard you guys work and how much you put into it. And I respect it and I appreciate it. But what kind of thoughts run through your head when you're walking out of there on the last day of the 2024 training camp?
It's a little bit of relief because it's a grind,
right?
Especially, I'm getting older. It's a young man's game, so to speak. It's not like it once was. I mean, when we used to do two a days, those days were, I'm amazed. Forget about the players. I'm amazed how we did them. And from that standpoint, but it is a little bit disappointing at the same time because it's not, also back then we would watch practices at times during the regular season. So there wasn't that immediate end. But the positive is you get more access to the players during the upcoming period than you do. In training camp, it's more controlled. They bring players to us. We're not allowed to go in the locker room. So it's a give and take. When the regular season starts, we got far more access to the players. And that is, a better place, to be honest, to gather information, even though you're not able to watch the actual practices. So it's a little bit of a give and take.
Yeah, good stuff there, Johnny Mac. Let's get into the practice today. You mentioned Jaylen Herz did not get his streak, but outside of that, what did you see from practice today? What were your overall takeaways from today's week? Or what was it, day 16 or was today 15?
16. 16.
You can't lose track on the last day. Come on, Xander.
15 here, 1 in Foxborough. But Kenny Gainwell, man. Woo! What's been interesting about this training camp? You've seen some great practices. I mean, and I just wrote about this on SI. It's like Allen Iverson rules apply. It is just practice, but you've seen some great practices from individual players. AJ Brown, Nakobe Dean a couple days ago. Kenny Gainwell was in the zone today. I've been covering the Eagles full time since 2016, and before that, I was down there quite a bit from 2013 on. So it's been a long time. I have never seen a running back practice as impressive as I saw today from Kenny Gainwell.
That is a massive statement.
I know. It was unbelievable. We're talking about Jaylen Herz. They did a 2-minute drill at near the end of practice. I asked Jaylen about Kenny today. He caught every ball in the drive that went for a touchdown. He ran. He touched it on every play. And the final play was a diving, more like a sliding catch in the corner of the end zone that would be good for, Justin Jefferson to make. And this is a running back. It was just, and that's what Jaylen called it. He made that unbelievable catch in the corner. And that was maybe not his best play. If you go all the way back to, for people that remember, the people that listen all the time, or people that were there, the only public practice at Lincoln Financial Field, when he ghosted Nakobe Dean in the open field, and then he got him on the wheel route. That was a pretty impressive practice. But that ghost move, which you bring up Allen Iverson in practice, it's also, that's sort of like what he did to Nakobe Dean. He broke him down like it was Allen Iverson. He did the same thing to Devin White today. Just left him, ghosted him in the middle of the field. Just like one of Iverson's best crossovers. That was another highlight. Then he was in the red zone. He had a great jump cut on a run. One of Kellen Moore's best plays of camp. He had Kenny Gainwell lined up outside. He used him in motion to come back in the backfield. It looked like play action. It looked like he was going to block somebody, but he wasn't blocking somebody. He was just leaking out of the middle of the line and sort of hiding. And it was the easiest touchdown you'll ever see. And Devin White got caught in the trash trying to get to Kenny Gainwell. And even in pass protection, which has been a weakness of his, he stoned Nakobe Dean on a blitz, and Nakobe's had a great camp as a blitzer. Unbelievable practice.
Gonna have to talk to you. We're gonna have to have a running back segment after we get through our initial breakdown. I don't want to dive too much in because I want to get the full update on the practice so I can create, the highlight for the show afterward, or, for your breakdown of day 16. But boy, John, that's some intriguing stuff that Kenny Gainwell's playing that good. I got to wonder what kind of role he's going to have on this team this year, even with Saquon Barkley in front of him. But we'll talk a lot more about that later. Good to hear Kenny Gainwell looked so good today. What else did you see from an offensive standpoint, Johnny Mac? Start with Jaylen Herz. I know he threw the interception, but outside of that, how'd he look today?
Well, I am, I know a lot of people do the thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways, whatever they do about Jaylen Herz. I don't think he's had a thumbs down through 16 practices. Now, there have been some great ones, and there have been some mediocre ones. And I would say as you headed toward the end of practice, say 13, 14, 15, 16, somewhere in that range, it hasn't been as good as it was earlier. But I don't think he's had a bad practice this entire summer. And that continued today. There was the interception, but, he threw it late in the middle of the field. Slay kind of baited him. And he's done that in the past. He's a very good corner. But, who cares? He had a great go route to Devontae Smith for a touchdown on Kaylee Ringo, who sort of, that ebb and flow of training camp. He's sort of on a down tick again. The last couple practices, the Gainwell stuff, the 2-minute drive, solid stuff. Early, though, they were struggling with pass protection. Jalen Carter, who's another guy we don't talk about as much as we should, we talk about, but he's like the defensive A.J. Brown. Like, he's in the backfield all the time against a really good offensive line. And he was creating some havoc early, which made it a little bit difficult for the offense, but they settled down. And yeah, I mean, Kenny was the star of practice, so they were doing some things offensively.
What about the update on the offensive line, Johnny Mac, with Becton? Was he out there? What was the health update on that offensive line?
Yeah, Becton's out there. He's been out there the past 2 days, so he's fine. No issues from when he left practice a couple days ago, other than the daily stuff. And obviously, he's got an issue in general with that knee, and he wears the bulky brace that he doesn't like to talk about. We just talked about Jaylen Herz. You know, a lot of players don't want to talk about injuries because they suck, so they don't like to talk about them. But yeah, he's obviously got something, and have to keep an eye on it just in a general sense. Same thing with Landon Dickerson and his history. So those guys have been banged up, but they're out there every day. Lane, occasionally gets that Veterans Day, but he was out there. Cam's out there. So everybody's out there from a first team standpoint. Interesting move today. The Eagles brought back Jason Poe, and they cut CJ Uzama. So
and we had Uzama on the 53 last night, didn't we, John?
Yeah. I mean, I was wavering whether to keep 2 or 3, but I think when you use as much 12 personnel as Kellen Moore does, you can't go into a season with just 2 tight ends, and I don't think the Eagles will. So now I think that's another position they'll be looking to add as we get down to the cut down, and maybe they check the waiver wire and they see what tight ends shake loose elsewhere. EJ Jenkins has had a nice camp, and he got banged up in the Patriots game, and he played very well. But he's back. But boy, man, I don't know if you have backups with Grant Calcaterra and EJ Jenkins. EJ's a former receiver, so that's kind of why I would lean towards CJ Uzama. But I also always said, look, he's 31. He didn't play well in his last season with the Jets. That's why they cut him. And he also had some injuries. So, when you get to that age, maybe there's nothing left. And he did not have a good summer. Ultimately, I lean towards, well, yeah, but from my perspective, he's only here for the Jack Stoll role to block. And the Eagles want to go in a different direction, and we'll see if they're happy with EJ Jenkins. Maybe Albert Okwuegbunam's still not practicing. He's always in the mix because Howie traded for him, but he's not practicing. McAllen Castles was an undrafted kid that they liked, but he hurt his leg at the Lincoln Financial Field practice. He's already on injured reserve. So, and they brought in a couple guys late who aren't really candidates for the 53. Kevin Folsch and Armani Rogers. They need to add something at that position. And I think they will add something at that position.
We'll see what they end up doing there, Johnny Mac. Good breakdown there on that part of practice. Let's move into that defensive side of the ball, John. What'd you see from them today? Who are the starters at the key positions, and what stood out on defense today?
Well, the default setting has been Devin White and Zach Bond, and that continued. But for the first time, Nakobe Dean got more first-team reps than anybody else. So I think that's trending where it should be. And that's, probably going to be Nakobe Dean and Devin White. Um, in the opener, I still think that's the way it's going to go. I do think there's going to be roles for Zach Bond, and they will try to get Jeremiah Trotter on the field for, maybe a series here and there. But I do think that's trending towards Nakobe as it should. Um, and then corner is looking like it's going to be. And again, boy, I was talking to this with our buddy Martin Frank, and everybody's like, one of my pet peeves. Well, base, Quinion's going to be outside, and I'm like, well, base isn't base like it used to be in 1975. The Packers play the way the Packers play, and there's going to be a bunch of receivers on the field. So there's going to be 3 corners on the field, probably 80% of the time, conservatively, against Green Bay. And when that happens, it's probably going to be Slay and Rogers outside, Quinion Mitchell inside. But when there are 2 corners on the field, it will be Slay and Mitchell. So Mitchell's going to be the 3 down corner. Mitchell's going to be the guy out there for every play. And ultimately, obviously, they'll try to get Cooper DeJean ramped up as quickly as possible. But, yeah.
How did he look today, John Cooper?
Well, he didn't look as bad as he did on Sunday, but that would be difficult. I do think, I do think he's playing out of position, even though people don't think he's playing out of position. And it's going to take more time than I would have hoped. But there's still plenty of time before September 6th. What do we got? 16 days. Unfortunately, things get complicated a little bit by going to Brazil because it screws up the schedule. I'm doing this off the top of my head. Let me pull up my calendar since we got time. We got a 2-hour show, but obviously tomorrow's going to be a walkthrough, and that's a shift from the schedule. By the way, the Eagles changed to a green practice. One of the reasons why they shifted the schedule. Today was essentially a scrimmage, so it was a heavy workload day, especially for the key players who are not going to play in the final preseason game. So they have a walkthrough tomorrow, a walkthrough Friday, and the game's on Saturday. And typically, players would have off Sunday, and they would come back and practice Monday before cutdown day on the 27th. The Eagles are not going to practice on Sunday or Monday before the cuts because they don't have a Labor Day this year because of the Brazil trip, and that's screwing the schedule up. So that's sort of the week ahead.
How early are they going to Brazil, John? Do you know yet?
Yeah, they're going Wednesday. They're not going to be there long.
I think, isn't it in the past, some teams that have gone overseas, they go like a week early? Or was that just Jacksonville because they had a couple games out there, I guess?
Very early when they started to go to London, teams would go for the entire week, and it would be a whole thing. But now most teams go in late.
Eagles want to limit their Sao Paulo exposure.
Well, not only that, it's a matter of practicality and the fact that it's a Friday game, which is weird to begin with.
Yeah, really weird.
They're missing, a typical NFL week is the big practices on Wednesday. Practice Thursday, practice Friday, and a walkthrough Saturday before the game. That's a typical NFL week. While the Eagles are traveling Wednesday and a very long trip, they have to do a few things for the NFL's international partners, but not much. And and then the game, and then they're flying back right after the game. So they're basically going to, they have to practice Sunday, Monday, and they'll probably do a little bit on Tuesday, but that's just speculation before they leave on Wednesday. So the whole thing is screwed up. That game is awful on so many levels for the
It really
Philadelphia
is.
Eagles. It just is. It just is. And on the other hand, Jeffrey's embraced it. So it's not like, I mean, he's
Yeah,
part
he
of the
probably has
reason.
no choice though, right?
No, I don't know. He's fought back for many years. He didn't want to go to London, never mind Brazil. I think his mind is open up from a business standpoint. He knows it's important for the league, even though it sucks for the Eagles. So he's biting the bullet. And, still the biggest point to me that I bring up all the time is Green Bay is going to be good. And you're giving up a home game against projected to be one of the better teams in the NFC. Maybe they aren't, injuries, blah, 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 can strike anybody. But on paper, they look pretty good. And the game would have been here. It's a home game. And, you want to play the best teams at home, especially when you have the home field advantage that the Eagles have.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. Can I ask all of our viewers right now? We got 250 almost of you guys on YouTube, plenty of others on our other social platforms. Can we get that like button rolling? We need some love for Johnny Mac for a great training camp, covering everything all off season long, working his butt off, doing night shows, doing morning shows, driving down to the link. Smash that like button, everybody. I want to have a big like night tonight to help push the show. To show some love for our man, John McMullen here. Johnny Mac, any other takeaways on the practice today, specifically on the practice that stood out, whether it's a player, a certain play? What else happened today? Day 16.
I'll tell you, one of the most interesting parts was for the second time, and he ended camp with these sort of one-on-one battles between players, and it's really fun. The players get into it. The whole team gathers around, and Nick sort of calls out two people. And, depending on what they are, to give you an example, the first rep was Britton Covey against Cooper DeJean. So obviously it's a one-on-one receiver against defensive back. Britton kind of beat him, as he typically has since he came back. Britton's a very good route runner. Bad throw. Couldn't, the players were all gathered around. Couldn't even tell who threw it. But it was a bad throw. Britton had him beat, but, win for the defense because of the bad throw. Next up was AJ against Quinion, which was, Slay said, Quinion was chomping at the bit because he got beat by AJ the day before. And he had good coverage on AJ, and it was off target throw by Jaylen. Jaylen did throw that one. So another win for the defense. And of course, Mitchell
Quinion gets a win on AJ. Love it.
Yeah. And he stared down AJ, did the whole thing. He's got he's such an interesting guy because he's so quiet, but then when he wins a rep, he gets very CJ like and starts to celebrate and get in people's faces. Then it was pass rusher Nolan Smith and Darian Kennard, and Nolan won that one. Nice little swim move, which really, really fired up the defense when he won that route. And the final one was a series, and this was one of the funnest things you're ever going to see. For the last one, there were 3 reps. It was Ty Davis-Price, who's a backup running back, against Ben Van Sumeren, linebacker. So it was pass pro at first, and they did back-to-back reps. And Ben got a little bit of sort of push, more like a bull rush, but Ty Davis-Price held up pretty well on both reps. And then and then they changed it to Ben Van Sumeren, who, by the way, at Michigan at the start of his career was an offensive player, and he was running a route like an offensive player, and it was unbelievable. He dipped his shoulder inside and just completely shook. It was
Ben,
was
baby.
tied.
Ben showing some offensive
Yeah.
prowess out there.
It was unbelievable. I kid you not. It was unbelievable. Everybody was going nuts, and Kenny Pickett missed the throw.
Oh, come on, Kenny. You got to be kidding me, John. Ben, you're telling me Ben Van Sumeren runs a route on Ty Davis Price, and Kenny Pickett can't hit the throw?
And the funny thing was that our buddy Andrew DeCecco was tweeting it out, Ben running a route. And all the fans are, oh, you got it wrong. He's a defensive player. And it's like, we know, dude. We know what's going on.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, it was I wish people could see. It was a tremendous route.
Dang, I would love to see that footage.
Yeah. I hope the Eagles put it up. And Kenny missed the throw. I don't know if Ben would have caught it, but he missed the throw.
Start the Tanner McKee buses, everybody. Start the Tanner McKee buses. Kenny can't hit Ben Van Sumeren. You got to be kidding me. Now, that's great, though, John, to hear that. I always say for people that watch our show, I believe that they're the most educated Eagles fans because of you, John. You talk about every player from the top to the bottom of the roster, and you've talked about this player a lot, and I'm sure not many others have talked about him as much as you have. You think he's going to have a role in this football team this year?
Oh yeah, he's one of the core special teams guy. He's going to be one of the best special teams players the Eagles have. I saw, Jimmy Kempski said he's got a little bit of Brian Bremen in him. He's that type of player. He's killing people on special teams. And I know that doesn't get a lot of press, but he's really good to the point where, at the start of camp, the Eagles signed Oren Burks, who's, been a pretty proven NFL player. Not only as a backup linebacker, as a third linebacker, famously went into the Super Bowl when Trey Greenlaw got hurt. But he's also been a good special teams player. And you said, well, how is Ben Van Sumeren going to make this team? And Oren got hurt. Now it's the point to me, how is Oren Burks going to make this team because of Ben Van Sumeren? So breaking news, by the way, former Eagle, former Giant, former Viking, but Linval Joseph signing with the Dallas Cowboys.
Holy moly. How old is he? 36?
Yeah, Linval's getting up there.
Linval's
one of the most powerful players in football, though. Kelsey would rave of that.
35. He's 35, and so he'll be 36 in October.
Yeah. Good guy, dude. Good dude.
John, he was great when he was here. He came in here for a specific role, him and Sue, and they were both great that year. At least I thought they were.
Well, obviously he was older. When Linval was with the Giants and Vikings and he was making Pro Bowls, he was arguably the best nose tackle in football. And I always said he was the guy that the Eagles want Jordan Davis to become. And early, not when he was here. He wasn't that same, but he certainly helped them. The Eagles were having a really difficult time when Jordan Davis got injured because they didn't have that type of player. And he kind of settled things down. But in his prime, what I'm talking about, and that's when Jason Kelsey was talking about him, that's what he was famous for. He was the strongest guy in the NFL. That was his reputation. And that's, you can imagine, there's a lot of strong dudes in the NFL. And he's so powerful. But a good guy, good player. And yeah, he's keeping it going. Unfortunately for the Dallas Cowboys, I guess, for Eagles fans.
Yeah. a last-ditch effort for the Cowboys. We'll see what ends up happening with everything there. John, any other things before we hit our first commercial break worthy of discussing from today's practice 16, the final touches on training camp, at least in front of the reporters? Any other things worth mentioning from today?
Yeah, a little bit disappointed the way the offense finished up the summer after starting so well. And a lot of it has to do with, some poor play from the second, third team. So, but you see some of the injuries and where they're coming and some of the offensive line issues, and guys missing practices. So that was a little, the reps, Kenny hasn't looked good. Tanner hasn't looked good since, the Patriots game in practice. And, that has more to do with the reps, and they get very muddy because their blocking is poor. The depth of receiver is poor. And then you add to it that John Ross is out with a concussion. Johnny Wilson's out with a concussion.
That's a long time now for Johnny Wilson, by the way. That's over a week since he got that concussion. That's maybe something to keep an eye on, right?
Well, John got it after Johnny. Johnny got it in the practice with the Patriots. John got it in the game.
Right. So technically Johnny had it first, but both of Johnny, out.
Yeah. But they've both been in. And that, Johnny's going to make the team, Johnny Wilson. John Ross probably hurts him pretty dramatically. But we'll see how that shakes out. Now tight end without, CJ Uzama not working out. They look really thin at tight end.
We're going to talk about that later on in the show. Right, running backs I want to talk about, and then tight ends I also want to talk about. We will get
I should mention that the guys who got injured on Sunday, I mentioned Dallas. It's an oblique injury. But he was out there
in the injury report today. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. In Dallas, he was out there watching, so I don't think it's terribly serious, because if it were, they wouldn't let him stand on the sidelines and watch. So that was a positive. Jalix Hunt also was a new addition with an oblique injury.
Oblique is where, John? Here on the side of your rib, by your ribs?
Yeah. And that could be like, if it's serious, it could be like a 4 or 6 week injury.
Right.
But I don't, by the way Dallas was moving and looking, I don't think it's terribly serious, but I'm not a doctor. Trevor Keegan hurt his hip. He left practice on what day are we? I said
it's Wednesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
So Tuesday, Trevor left, Dallas left. So I apologize for that. But Trevor looked potentially more serious when he got hurt in practice. It was noticeable, limping off. Turns out it was a hip. But the positive is that he was out there also watching and didn't seem to be dramatically in distress or anything of that nature. So hopefully it's not long-term with him either. So those were the new guys added to the injury list. And Dallas Goedert, man. Yeah, they need him out there, because tight end they got some depth issues on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We talked about that today on the National Football Show, and I was on there with that tight end, and I kind of had a realization. I'm like, wait a second. Dallas Goedert's a guy that's been injured. They're going to use, it seems like they're using more 12 personnel. Is tight end 2 more important than wide receiver 3? It's possible to think about, considering Calcaterra had 4 catches last year. I don't know, worth a conversation, but we'll get to that after the break, John. We're going to talk about the tight end position. Real quick on the way out, would you register this then as a defensive win day?
No, because of Kenny. Okay. I mean,
I thought with your comment there about them the offense being a little bit disappointed.
Well, and there are plenty of good defense, a lot of good pass rush, a lot of good Jalen Carter. As you mentioned, Bryce Huff might have had a sack and take away the interception. Blah blah blah. A lot of good pass rush early. A A lot of good work from second, third teams. But when you have a practice like Kenny Gainwell had, yeah, it kind of tilts it towards the offense.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. Sydney family drops in the super chat. Goddard is so underrated. Sydney, thanks for the super chat, man. We appreciate it. We hope it'll be interesting to see Dallas Goddard this year. I think he's going to have a big year with Kellen Moore, but we'll see what he's able to do. John, let's get to our commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk Kenny Gainwell, Johnny Mac. What you said at the open is too good to pass up for some meat on the bone to talk about Kenny Gainwell, Saquon Barkley, the whole running back room. So we'll do that. We'll talk tight end too and the backup tight ends, some final touches. And then, John, I'm throwing this on you now. I want you to have a chance to think about it. In the last 30 minutes or so of the show today, we're going to do 5 players, stock up after camp, 5 players, stock down. I want you to have a chance to think about that, but that's what I want to go. And it doesn't have to be 5, but I want to get your biggest guys who stock up, looked great at camp, and you think you're going to have a big season or at least a bigger role than previously anticipated. And then I want to go stock down guys that didn't look good that we were hoping to look good. So we'll do all that in hour number 2. I want to thank everybody for being here. Up to 70 likes already, guys. I said it a little earlier. I want to have a massive like show for John McMullen. He worked hard through training camp, doing multiple shows a day, doing the night show after being down there all day. He's working his butt off for us here at JAKIB Sports to give us the content and you guys the information. So we appreciate Johnny Mac. Let's smash that like button tonight. Let's get to 200 likes on Birds 365, already at 71. So appreciate you guys for being in here. Birds 365 will be back in 3 minutes on the other side.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.